Hi everyone, hope all is well. One of the last times we met in person, I shared information about the then developing COVID-19 pandemic. We have gone through so many changes and so much new information surfaces daily that even my perspective has changed tremendously. I encourage you all to stay safe and strong and use the info we get wisely. No one could have imagined where we are today, but we can imagine a better tomorrow. We're all in this together. Give when and however you can. Let's get started. Our final chapter, 14, is on altruism and cooperation. What better topic could there be with all that's going on in the world right now? What is altruism? Altruism is essentially the compassionate concern and sympathy that we feel towards others. One definition is pro-social behavior that is beneficial to others without regard to any consequence for oneself. Another way to put it is any behavior that is designed to increase another person's well-being, particularly those behaviors that do not seem to provide direct reward for the person who performs them. Altruism isn't blind, meaning we tend to be specific in whom we are concerned with, such as children, the injured, or other vulnerable populations. Pro-social behavior is often shaped by situational constraints or culture. We can be primed or cultivated to be altruistic by our families and our lived experiences. However, just because we feel altruistic doesn't mean that we always act on it. Fear of embarrassment and the desire to save ourselves are two forces that sometimes inhibit us from acting altruistic. Why does altruism matter? For the greater good. Healthy societies depend on individuals cooperating for the common good, even at a risk of personal loss. Improving our own well-being through altruism. Science tells us that helping others is good for our own personal well-being. Remember back when we studied emotions and volunteering and giving were some of the top ways to promote happiness? By helping others, we help ourselves. People may be more inclined to act in their own self-interest, but we often choose to cooperate. Cooperation helps increase the chance of survival and reproductive success for ourselves and others. So, what are the motives behind altruism? Let's look at the top three. 1. Social reward. Enjoying the praise received from others for helping. 2. Personal distress. Feeling uncomfortable when you see others suffer. And 3. Empathic concern. Relating to and imagining how others are feeling. Let's look a little closer. Social reward. It can be described as a benefit of being esteemed and valued by others. The desire to be respected leads people to sacrifice personal desire for the greater good of the environment. People motivated by social reward enjoy the respect and positive regard of others. This is an egoistic or selfish motive. Chrysispius, Tiber, and Vandenberg in 2010 conducted a study in which they asked participants to think about gaining the respect of others and then choose the type of products they would buy. It was found that participants were more likely to choose environmentally friendly consumer products over equally priced but more desirable luxury products to appear environmentally conscious. Being esteemed by others activates the areas of the brain associated with reward and safety. feels just as good to give as to receive. Did you know when people give money, the reward circuit of the brain is activated in the same manner as when they receive money? Personal distress. Personal distress serves as a motivator to help others in order to reduce our own personal distress. We're motivated to respond to the suffering of others with personal distress from very early in life. Seeing others suffer activates the area of the brain associated with pain. Martin and Clark in 1982 conducted a study of newborns and found that when exposed to a recording of the crying of themselves, another day-old infant, or an 11-month-old, they cried the most in response to that of another newborn. Later in life, we continue to experience distress when we witness others crying in pain or embarrassed. When we watch someone else in pain, the pain regions of our own brains become activated, so we act in ways that will return us to a peaceful state. The most direct way to alleviate our own personal distress is to reduce the other person's distress by helping. This too is an egoistic motive. Empathic concern is identifying with and understanding what a person in need is feeling and experiencing with the intention to help the person. Seeing others in distress and imagining what they must be experiencing, taking on an empathic state of sympathy or concern is another way to describe empathic concern. Empathic concern is an other-oriented or unselfish motive. The process is often fast and intuitive, split-second impulsive empathy. When we are empathically motivated, we have the desire to help a person address their need and enhance their personal welfare, even at our own expense. Batson and colleagues conducted studies in 1983 and 1986. Their research revealed that people who experience empathic distress or high empathy would be more likely to voluntarily take on physical distress from another person and exhibit more altruistic behavior, even when no one would know about their altruistic behavior. The 1983 study, participants were told they'd be interacting with another person of the same sex who happened to be a Confederate and in on the research. The Confederate had been asked to recall numbers and would be shocked for the mistakes they made. One set of participants could leave after witnessing at least 2 shocks, and the others were told they had to witness all 10 shocks. After 2 trials, the Confederate was made up to look pale and express being uncomfortable and asked for water. At this point, participants were asked how they felt in order to separate them into an egoistic distress group or an empathic concern group. They were then asked if they'd be willing to take on shocks on behalf of the Confederate. Those labeled as egoistic took few shocks, but empathic group, they volunteered to take more shocks even when they could leave the experiment. So, people with empathic concern are more likely to help others even when it proposes to be a risk to their own well-being. Of course, this study has some flaws because selection bias could exist in which the people that were attracted to participate were just more empathic volunteers to begin with. After all, they were volunteering. So in 1986, Batson and friends were at it again. This time, the participants were in a cubicle next to Janet, also a research Confederate, who wrote notes to them. They were asked to try to form an accurate impression of Janet, One set of participants were told to be objective and focus on facts, and the others to vividly imagine how Janet felt. 2 notes from Janet were shared, one in which she shared that she felt out of place in her new home and the university, and the other note expressed a need for a friend and asked if they would hang out. Both groups were asked by the experimenters how much time they would be willing to spend with Janet. In the low social evaluation group, they received the notes in a sealed envelope and were the only ones to read it, and were told that no one would know what their response would be. In the other group, the experimenter and the participant read the notes, and the experimenter would know their response. High empathy, vivid imaginers volunteered to spend more time with Janet, even when they know no one would know what their response would be.